All right. What's up, everybody, and welcome back. Today we are joined by David Kim of RTS Legend, one of the key designers on the StarCraft 2 multiplayer, who's worked on many different RTS projects and gaming projects over the years. And he's here to talk about Battle Aces, a game which is in their current second closed beta test right now. It is an RTS that has scaled back a lot of the sacred cows and standard macro things that are big in RTS and simplified them and allowed players to get to the core decision making, the action, and probably have, I would say, some of the most exciting and immediately fun RTS content we've seen in years. There's a bunch of different things that have gone on, of course, recently with the game and its development. So today we're going to try and talk a little bit about the monetization and progression with big kind of changes in discussion and also some drama over the last week that's been talked about. We'll move on to talking about balance as well as the patch, which is, I believe, gone live now just earlier today, or if not, it's going live later today. I need to check in on that. And then we will, of course, be talking about the planned patch cadence for the future, what the plans are for full release, as well as taking some questions from the community, some hot topics that people were talking about on Reddit. So without further ado, thank you very much for joining me, David. How are you doing, mate?
Yeah, really good. Yeah, thanks for having me as always.
It's nice to have such communicative devs in this early stage. You guys are a small team, but you've been responding to things very quickly in the previous beta in this one, which has been nice because it does feel like there's definitely a lot of feedback from the community that's kind of been going back and forth. The big topic in the last week was the progression system and the different kind of warpath and monetization methods that were being tested. So there was definitely a big change you guys made the other day where you kind of scrapped the system that you'd been testing, and you said, hey, we're just going to unlock all the units for everyone, let everyone just kind of play with all the toys and kind of have fun with it. What kind of led to that whole decision with the progression and monetization system, and what kind of, I guess, information, what data points did you kind of gather from those first few days of testing?
Yeah, so we took this part of the game a little bit too easily in hindsight. And what I mean by that is we thought it's a like this type of I guess progression MTX model was a very tried and true, proven type of model in different genres. But what we underestimated, I believe, in the hindsight, is fitting it into an RTS game that's really never been done before. Like it's a lot more challenging than we had anticipated, kind of thing, right? So while we assumed there's obviously going to be issues that we're going to have to react to once we go to closed beta, we didn't expect it to be as, I guess, problematic as we thought. The quick TLDR on our side point of view is we think the biggest mistake made was with the pacing of the unit unlocks with the whole system. I'm not saying this is the only issue, but like this was the biggest one. And that's why we wanted to act pretty quick. This was discussed maybe a couple days, and then we had the weekend to think about it. So, like, quite a lot of discussions on our end happened on the weekend, too, kind of thing, right? And first thing Monday, we kind of came to a conclusion and then notified the public as quickly as we can, kind of thing, right? If I remember right. But so much has been going on this week, so it's a little bit of a blur to me, too.
Yeah, you guys have obviously there was a bit of kickback there. And for people who don't know, basically just the unit unlocks were quite slow, and you guys were testing the new warpath system, which is kind of like, I guess, like a season pass is kind of the more common term, I guess, across different gaming things. There's been war chests in StarCraft and different things. They have the same sort of, you get experience and you unlock a bunch of rewards, and that can be like a premium track, which is for people who pay for it. And then there's also the free items, which even if you pay nothing, you still get a bunch of cool kind of unlocks each season or whenever this warpath goes for, right? So that came out as well, but I think a lot of the drama basically came, and the frustration was that the war credit system was also revamped at the same time. So it was very limiting in terms of those units. And it felt like it was taking very long to unlock units after you'd get your first unit unlock. Your second one would be quite a bit slower. And then it would really be very, very many games to unlock each unit. So you mentioned, you took this system from other games and realizing that it is a bit different in RTS, right? As opposed to unlocking. I believe we were chatting earlier in the week. You mentioned that, a MOBA hero is something you'd thought of as sort of a metric, right? As something to unlock, but you realize that a deck in Battle Aces is kind of more analogous to it. Whereas you guys were thinking of like a single unit unlock was almost like getting a new MOBA character, but it didn't feel that way to the players. Players felt like only if they had a full set of units, then they actually got a full character they could experience.
I would say it's a lot more nuanced, but at a high level, yeah, completely, right? But it's hard to know. I want to say certain units that really change up and have a big impact on the game. I would say that unit specifically is probably more like a hero in a MOBA, right? Versus
Mm-hmm.
like the other extreme exists too. It's like say I switch out a unit. Here, let me think. Maybe the Valkyrie is a decent example here. If I switch out to the Valkyrie, then oftentimes, and not every time, but oftentimes what happens is that Valkyrie threat makes it such that you don't go cat bust or something like this, right? Because the fact that I have it. So like from a playing point of view, not much could change, even though one unit is changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So our thought is it's somewhere in between one unit all the way up to 8 units is like one hero kind of thing, right? But if
Yeah.
we had to just pick and average it out and pick, then it's probably more on the many unit side than just the one unit side, right? When I say that we think the biggest issue was the unit, let me give maybe my personal example too, how I saw it clearly, right? I was playing quite a bit. I'd say like at least 100 or 200 games or something like this, right? And I've decided like I'm gonna unlock the units in this order, which probably not the most common use case, but I know all the units is why I personally decided that way, right? And I was stuck at like 2 units unlocked, and believe I was at 500 war credits on top of that by the time we made the all units available change kind of thing, 520 or something like this, right? But the third unit that I wanted was 700. But I've been playing almost a week, like quite a lot. And I honestly haven't really changed up how my strategy plays from when I had my free units versus when I added the 2 units. And it's some of it is my fault, I guess, right? I chose the units that are kind of not super stand out. But this could be an average use case too. And that's where we say this is problematic. Like this is way too long until someone tries out something like new and different for the first time or second time or something like this, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think for me personally, and I've definitely heard it resonate with a lot of people, the joy of the discovery in Battle Aces is that it is a very intuitive game. I often say my favorite thing about Battle Aces is that most RTSs, when I learn them, I spend the first few hours reading tooltips and googling things. Like that's what learning most strategy games is for me. It's like it's not what a casual gamer would consider playing a game. You know, it's like you're doing homework, you're trying to understand things. And whilst I still have moments of that in Battle Aces, I'm sure you've heard me being like stats, show me stats, which I really appreciate you guys sharing those stats on Reddit the other day, by the way. Um, Immediately I was able to get in and just kind of go, oh, okay, this is like a tank, and okay, it kind of runs around like this. And there's this discovery element, and I think the joy of that discovery is amplified. You know, the more you get to try different units out and swap them in and out. And for me, um, I'm always in admiration of competitive gamers who are like much more methodical and like they think through things and they see problems before they arise. I'm more of like a monkey see, monkey do sort of player where I experience something that feels overpowered and I want to try it and go, oh, this is how it works. Oh, okay, it doesn't feel that powerful now that I'm using it because people are beating me and I'm seeing how it works. And for me, it's like understanding what's happening from all sides of an RTS is what takes away my frustration, right? It's the understanding because whenever I'm playing competitive games, it's I experience something that feels unfair and too powerful, and it's always the information gap for me between I don't understand how that thing could have destroyed me so hard. I don't know what I did wrong. I don't know how I got taken advantage of. And being able to try out the units at a quicker pace or at least have different options to sub in and out to have different strengths, I think solves a lot of those frustration problems that are so endemic to fast paced RTS.
Yeah, so this one is an interesting one, and it's not about stats specifically, and I'll try to show as best as I can what I mean. It's not that we want to show stats or we don't want to show, like, this wasn't the core thing that we were going after, but it was more like we have a brand new studio, brand new IP that no one has ever heard of, brand new team, even um, like all these factors made it such that we made this high level decision slash goal of making sure that we have to show the core fun of battle aces as quickly as possible, especially to players who don't know us, which is most players out there, I believe, right? Um, so from this point of view, we had goals both in and outside of the game. And stats is something that I guess people look at, study, analyze outside of the game more so than in game, I guess, right? So let's look at the outside of the game design point of view. Our thought was the more we clutter up the out of game experience with more systems, more information, etc., the lower the chance that players will hit that play button and experience what's fun about and I'm not talking about like the hour 10, 20 plus fun. I'm talking about immediately I just downloaded the game or I just whatever bought the game and I'm starting to play for the first time. An average player, our guess was an average player is not going to give us as serious of a shot as say like a proven IP, a proven company making the game, etc. So from this point of view, we had all these questions on the specifics of, okay, then what do we not show and what do we show? And stats was in this category of like, we absolutely knew experienced RTS players like yourself or many of your viewers, etc. These people, of course, they want stats. There's no question about that, right? But we thought in closed beta, maybe this is something that we can try pushing. And worst case scenario, if it doesn't work, we can always change. This is just closed beta. Like we haven't even launched the game yet, kind of thing. But there was one, I guess, big mistake that we've realized very recently throughout, say, like user testing. And this is why user testing, short-term game testing, this is so important to us. Just as important as getting the buy-in from experienced art, like both are equally important is another thing that we kind of talked about before too, right? And this is a great example because this made us see that it's not just about what you said. Like that's very important for players like yourselves, right? To be able to look at the stats, analyze them, get enough info to know that, okay, I know what to expect roughly when I try this unit out for the first time or something like this. So this is super important, no doubt about that. Like we never had worries here, never concerns, etc. But what we realized from a brand new player point of view is they do also get a high benefit from the stats. And it's not because like they're skilled enough to be able to know that, like look at the numbers and know exactly, like this is like very difficult, right? But where the win is we realized when a brand new player, maybe not even an RTS player, looks at the units and looks at these different numbers, there's this sense of like I feel like I understand this unit a little bit better than what the limited info that we have right now. It feels more like, oh, I don't know, I don't want to try it. So it's actually
Hmm.
causing a barrier to trying out that unit, even for a new player point of view that doesn't know what like how any of these numbers work because I haven't played RTS before. So if there is a big win from a new user point of view, as well as a experienced player point of view, it's a win-win to do the stats kind of thing. So does that kind of make
Yeah.
sense? Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, no, it's fascinating because I've learned a lot of strategy games over the last year that I've never played before, and yeah, there is definitely that feeling of you go, oh, I do this thing does 300 damage, and you don't know what 300 damage really means. You have no idea what the hit points are of the units, but it just gives you that little comparison point. It just
Mhm.
gives you that thing where oh, I thought this other guy did really big damage. He only does 200. Oh, this does even more than him. And even within that limited scope, you just get some sense of something, and you feel like you get a bit more knowledge. So it's interesting to hear that you do think even for the casual gamers that's big. And as we saw when there is an unlock system as well, which was very limited in those early days of this beta, people were even more wanting to know that, right? Because people were kind of going, oh, which one do I pick? What am I going to unlock? Like I want to feel like I've got some information on exactly how it works and that sort of stuff. So that's kind of interesting. In terms of the stats coming in, that's great. In terms of the progression and capturing new players, right? Do you think having an addictive unlock system or just having a good progression and unlock system, do you think that's something that can actually help players get hooked on the game and be part of the core gameplay loop? Or is it more of a way of making sure you don't overwhelm players and you kind of let them unravel and lead them into the discovery of, ooh, I got a new unit. Let's swap it in for the other unit. ooh, now I have enough credits, I can buy my first unit. Whereas at the start, you're just unlocking, your foundry slot. You unlock your advanced foundry slot, right? So is it for you? Do you think it's more about progression being part of what's satisfying about playing the game? Is you hop on and you're grinding for a new unit and you're unlocking things and that's part of the joy? Or is it more just about teaching people the game? Or is it just a bit of both?
The short answer is we're still looking into this to form our opinions because we mentioned in our blog this week that we will be taking a bit of a step back and really keep an open mind to explore all possibilities on this front, right? And the reason why I say that is because we are in the process of not only gathering the feedback from the community, but also we have quite a lot of user research tests, surveys that we've. Coming out of the first closed beta test, one of our biggest regrets was we felt like we missed the mark a little bit on like research potential during it, surveys to answer directly what our next action items will be, etc. So we actually have all these prepped this time around. That's why one of the reasons why we wanted to focus so much on the user experience kind of thing to do it really right this time, because last time we didn't do it so well. It was our kind of TLDR takeaway. Long way to say. So there's been like test cases and deep dives that show one way that you mentioned, but then there's also cases of the other way kind of thing. So we really have to take the time to really analyze what we're even looking at kind of thing. So that's why it's a little bit tough to just kind of have our stance right now. But with that said, let me say my personal opinion too, which is I personally believe it's not just about like too many units is too overwhelming for this many players or that many like that could be a big factor too. But I think the other thing is the fun of playing and unlock like the RPG, I guess, progression. And I wonder if this is a big factor too, but we'll see. So it's these two things I think that we compare with are the wins of these two better for a game like Battle Aces compared to the wins of everything unlocked and everyone just plays with the whole set right at the launch of the game? Like this is kind of the question that we really want to get right and answer right. But we do have time. Like we're not looking at launching the game anytime soon. So we will have more, I guess, tests, closed beta, etc. So we have time, but we really want to do our due diligence before we like take a firm stance on one specific model.
It's very important with new IPs and new studios to get things right and to put good things in the hands of people. So it's nice that you guys are taking the time to test things out and try everything. On that note, you mentioned not planning to release anytime soon. Is there anything you can share about planned release date or range of time?
We do hope to release next year, but next year is a 12-month I guess window, right? So but not like right away or anything weird, anything crazy like that. It's
Yeah.
already November, middle of November right now. So and the honest truth is we don't know. Like we don't have a set date right now. We're
Mm.
really focused on making sure that we do our like the best improvements that we can, both from onboarding experience as well as the core game experience points of view.
Cool. So just to wrap up the kind of progression and monetization topic, after, of course, people were saying things, I think the two important things for us to touch on are, so a lot of people were saying, basically, if the game is going to be free to play, there should always be a free path to unlock all units. They feel like anything other than that is always going to create, if there's new units coming out that are paywalled, it will create a what many would call a pay to win. You could call it a pay to be slightly advantaged, pay to have more options kind of thing. Have you guys considered committing to the fact that there would always be eventually a free path to every unit unlock, even if there was, say, an exclusive period where it was premium? Or are you still saying, look, we're not setting anything in stone just yet? Because I think a lot of people in the community we're kind of just hoping for that affirmation from the studio to say, that there is like a guide rail or a guideline, because when they saw the progression system was so slow, They felt like, oh, this might be something where not only is the progression so slow, but you've got the knight and the crossbow in this very experimental version of the warpath. You guys have been very clear; it is very experimental. So, not saying you guys haven't said that they are both on the premium units that you're. It seems like you were testing. Oh, you guys would have to pay to unlock this, and people were going, oh, you could allay a lot of fears on the Reddit and other places where people are saying we really don't like these sort of monetization practices by offering some sort of guide rail or limitations. Have you guys thought about doing that?
So one of the things that we've realized is it's not such a simple answer here for a game like Battle Aces. So let me say this though. We don't want to create a situation where, say, like I am heavily disadvantaged because I didn't buy the battle pass this specific season and I happen to not have the knight or whatever, right? But this is very nuanced and there's a lot of details that we need to think about, kind of thing. So let me try to give an example to show what I mean. So if you remember back at the alpha stages, we had very soft counters. So very quickly, like within a matter of like 2 days or something quick, higher level players figured out like, okay, this deck or that deck, only two decks are viable. Everything else is not viable, kind of thing, right? So in
Mm-hmm.
this scenario, if this is the game that we have made and ultimately decided for Battle Aces, and I would absolutely say if one of those units is like in the premium track of the warpath, then yeah, like this is not okay. Like we can absolutely not do this, kind of thing. Um, Whereas what happened throughout testing is we realized, oh, for this type of deck building game, this is not very fun. Like solved meta in 2 days is not very fun. So what we did in closed beta 1 was we leaned a little harder into having a little bit more options in terms of counters, which led to, I think, really cool stuff. Things like I can sometimes beat, like APM wise, way better player than me if I have a much stronger knowledge. And then we talked about it on your stream during closed beta 1 too, right? And then we saw like quite high potential, and even like pro players were calling it, oh, this is quite fun actually, right? A lot more fun than the alpha that we tested before. So we decided to try pushing it a little further, and currently it's looking like, yeah, this was the right decision. It is fun for quite a lot of people. So if the more we go this way, this is really like I do wonder if there is a world where this is a non-issue. Like your initial question is a non-issue. So like let's look at it this way. The knight currently, I would say, was kind of on the underpower side, not on an even like equal on par side kind of thing. But let's hypothetically say that it was stronger than any other team tier one option. Say it was 10% stronger or 20% stronger, even, right? It's just the strongest by far. If tier one fights tier one, uh, you just win. But this doesn't really happen because the travel distance makes it so that I build a little bit more. So like a 10 or 20% advantage, I can overcome on the defensive kind of thing, right? So say that this is the situation, then am I really getting a big edge by getting this unit that's 10% stronger than all the other tier one units? And I think the answer is I don't think so, because the counters exist and they're very like clear counters even. So say that this is true and it is 10% stronger than everything else, then what's going to happen? I think it's pretty clear. People are going to put destroyers or butterflies in their decks. And like I'd be happy to meet knights that are 10% stronger than my tier one units because like they get dominated by my butterflies, right? And this is the same for higher tier units, maybe even more extreme for higher tier units. Say that the Gargantua was on the premium path, and it is straight up 10% stronger than any other tier 3 unit in the game right now. I mean, like if there's a guarantee that I'm going to be meeting a lot of Gargantuas right now because this is the strongest thing right now, it's so easy for me to win those games because all I need to do is bring the counter to it, and it's kind of, so you see what I mean, right? So I don't think the question of where it sits is the key here. I think we have to look at it as a whole of what is the game and what kind of situation are we really creating here, and what's the best move, kind of thing. So I'm not trying to say like I'm not making an argument for doing it this way or another, but all I'm trying to point out is we really should, I think, look at the game and through that lens decide what the best decision is, whether that's box game or whatever else, right? But all I'm trying to do is trying to show like
Yeah.
in the current situation, I don't think it's the case ever, no matter what 2 units you pick, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, so so this is interesting because I think what you're saying is very important when it comes to free to play game where some people are just going to choose to play it completely free, right? And you want them to still feel they can play competitively. I think what's interesting is because I think this sort of design philosophy is very important. What you're saying is that as long as there exists good counters and the units are very well balanced, it's it's not too big of an issue necessarily because there's always counters for those units. That being said, when it comes down to the kind of brass tacks, if the Gargantua is 10% better, it is still the best of those big options, right? Even though it's still counted, it's still just 10% better, right? And it is another
That's
option
right.
that's available. So I think when it comes to the hardcore community, especially, and a lot of the old men and women in the RTS community who are saying, I want to I want to buy my Warcraft 1 Orcs and Humans box with the manual in it, and that's the game, and nothing else is in it, and that's it. We want that old monetization model, and we're going to talk more about that in a little bit because you've mentioned box sets and things and buying box units. I think it's for a lot of them, I think this argument is very good at saying, hey, if there is a bit of a long grind for a new unit you haven't paid for, then fair enough. And, especially if things aren't priced too crazily, if you've got new units coming out every few months and you pay whatever the price is to unlock those immediately or very quickly, as opposed to, having a longer grind, I think that's big. But I do think at the end of the day, if there's not a free path guaranteed, I think that's going to lose you guys a lot of points in the community, in the hardcore people. I think a lot of casual gamers won't care, and a lot of people who come from other gaming communities won't care at all. But I do think there's a lot of hardcore RTS players who they'll just kind of say there's something on this like fundamental fairness level where they'll say, yes, there's counters to this. Like this isn't an auto win, but it gives more options, and there will be moments when in your game design where inevitably for a few days something feels overpowered, right? And it's not always true. Sometimes it's just players haven't figured it out. And if it's, that's the thing I can't get access to unless I pay money for, there's going to be people saying they will dumb it down and simplify it and say that is pay to win. Even if it's the least egregious form of pay to win, compared to any other game. This is not paying to make your units do 50% more damage, or we've seen different mobile games have these things. So I definitely would say my personal feedback in terms of that is I think you might be surprised how much the community is okay with, hey, if you're freeloading on a game and paying nothing for it, if you've got to spend a fair bit of time grinding and you don't get all the cool skins and things like that as perks, I think they'd be fine with that. But I think there is kind of this Rubicon, this line that players feel gets crossed in the hardcore RTS community where it for them, I think a lot of them will very vocally, even though it is a minority, I think it could be bad for the image of the game in the future. And I think that's just something you guys will need to consider. Obviously, you haven't committed one way or the other, but that would be my personal feedback on that one. No real question there, other than just saying I do think it's something where you guys should potentially consider drawing a line in the sand and saying, we will always have a free path to access units, even if there is like a free period or something like that. Is it something you've talked about exclusive periods at all with units, by the way, and then unlocking them later? Is that something you guys have considered?
Yeah, we talked a lot of options. But first, let me say, like, I do completely see where you're coming from, right? And we do hear this feedback, not just within the community, and it's all part of the consideration, I believe. But what's hard is it really depends on the tuning too. So, like for example, if a unit is on the free path, but the grind it takes is so long that no one outside of say like 0.01% of the players can even get to it, then is it really free though, kind of thing. So there are limits, but we do want to take all these factors into consideration before we commit. So there's that, and then
Yeah.
sorry,
You
what's
don't
your
want it to be like I guess did there was kind of like the Darth Vader skin back in the Star Wars battlefield was like the 40-hour unlock, which people lost their mind
So you
about a
practically
decade
have to
ago.
pay, even though it's free, whatever, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and then but then you've got more modern examples like in Clash Royale where if you want to get your double evolution level 15 card, it's actually 50,000 hours of grinding if you don't want to pay anything kind of thing. So obviously that's kind of the extreme there. Um I
Yeah.
think
And then
honestly with RTS audience, I think people would be willing to pay for things to skip a 5 hour unlock, to speed up a lot of processes though personally. So I think it's something where it doesn't even need to be anywhere in the same realm and people would still absolutely like appreciate, hey, these are new units, they look great. And the designs have been so fantastic on the units, the voices and everything like that as well. So I don't know, I feel like as the new skins and the cosmetics and the units come in, people will be so excited for kind of just the newness they bring and the freshening up of the scene that'll be interesting. Was there anything else you wanted to add on that monetization stuff, or can we talk about maybe the idea of having a box set, which you brought up a few times in your Reddit threads, like to maybe buy all the initial starting units, so it's kind of sorry. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about before we can get onto that?
But for the box,
Yeah.
yeah, nothing really concrete, right? But what we want to do at a high level is we want to gauge the advantages of different types of models, including box, and try to pick the right um, model that would support our high level goals. And maybe at
Mm-hmm.
the highest level, it's really two things. And everything points to it, like every decision points to it. So, like, whether we make this decision or that decision with the MTX model or pacing of unlocks, etc., it all boils down to just two things. The most important one, which leads to the second point, is making the most fun game of Battle Aces possible. Because our strong belief is this is by far the most important thing. There's no close second. Because every other problem we believe can be fixed much easier than if the game is not fun to play for players who like this type of game. And then the second would be through that, we want to reach as many players as possible. So it all kind of boils down to, say, like forecasting different models, having discussions on, like, okay, where are the, I guess, risks on this model versus that one? What are the unknowns? It's not going to be a clear cut thing.
Yeah.
It's the same as any other part of game development. We have to take a bunch of incomplete but helpful information, including player feedback, including data, like everything, right? Uh, Everything that we can gather, and then we just have to make a call. But we're just not ready to make that call yet because we're still in the information gathering stage, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely like as well the idea of the box set because what's interesting to me is you can kind of go, hey, here's a free to play game, but you have the option to almost purchase it like it's a classic, purchasable product. And I don't, that just didn't even occur to me that I'm like, oh, you could just do that. Like, where you're basically saying, hey, how do you want to play the game? Do you want to just play for free and then purchase things as you go and add bonuses? Do you just want to pay the upfront price and get all of the, the starting units or the units from the first year or whatever it is, right? Um, to get into the game. So I think that's cool. It does give people different options to get in there. I definitely do think that you're very the focus on gameplay is apparent. Things feel so smooth, the engine feels smooth, the units sound good, the crab's bloody adorable, and actually good right now in the meta, which I didn't think was going to be a good high tier unit, and neither did any of the top players except rank one on the ladder. Mr. Bowen on right now is showing that crabs are amazing, which is awesome to see. I love seeing these discoveries we're making constantly through the game and kind of what's working and what's not working.
Oh, sorry. Maybe I can say one more thing because it
Mhm.
really gives me confidence, and I do wonder if it will give you and many others out there confidence too. Which is when critical feedback is given by the players, or when, say, like certain results didn't come back the way we had I hoped for, etc. In these types of situations, I want to say, like, even our own team members really jump in and, like, they're really taking their time to analyze too, from their point of view as well, right? And this, I would say, is not the most common experience I've had working on different development teams, but the reason why this kind of gives me hope, maybe I can, like, give even specific example. Over the last week, when we started getting feedback on this front, as well as on the weekends, even like people like Luke, Tien, Veronica, like so many people on the team, like just in depth this just this morning, like because AJ was I was busy yesterday and then AJ was busy the day before, so like we couldn't have time to sync until this morning kind of thing. But like we're just like discussing like super just clearly, honestly, transparently, etc. on making the best possible battle aces possible. So just maybe the reason why I bring this up is because when I just look at it from my point of view, if we have this many people that care so much that they're going out of their way to use their own free time to help out the project be the best that it can be, at least it gives me a lot of hope that we can get there to the right solution someday. And I just wanted to point it out because it helps me a lot. So I wondered if it helps you and others out too.
Yeah, I think it's awesome to see, so much passion for the game and people wanting it to be as good as it possibly can. And I think when you get backlash like there was in the last week, I think it is a positive sign, right? And it is something that reacting quickly to things is something a lot of gaming companies have lost the ability to do. And thankfully, as a small team, you guys have been incredibly quick. I think honestly, this patch, this beta, it's the slowest response you guys have had to something, and it's simply because it kind of blew up right before the weekend. And you guys obviously all have families and things, and you had to discuss exactly how you would address it. But in general, like especially like the first closed beta test one, it's like, oh, day two, Clem figures out that the Beetle can just slightly outrange all the other tier one units, even though it's meant to be anti-air. And with his perfect world champion StarCraft micro, he can just beat every tier one unit in the game with an anti-air unit that's not meant to even be good versus ground. And, you guys fixed it the next day. And that happened several times in that. So we do really, we enjoy having that tight feedback loop. I think the big sentiment I'm seeing in Twitch chat, people discussing it right now, people on the forums and the Reddit and stuff is, it's interesting because testing out all these modes is great, and I feel like I do have more appreciation after watching what you guys are doing for the balancing act you're doing, because every beta you do is you putting your game out to kind of your most hardcore fan base and saying, hey guys, you get to play it a bit. Yes, you're helping us develop it, but it's also advertising. It's also putting the name out there of Uncapped Games and of Battle Aces and saying, here's our product. And it's this thing where it's like you kind of need to make a few missteps and have things be a bit wrong or broken to learn, but at the same time you can't do too much of that, because then people go, oh look, this game is going in the wrong direction and this sort of thing, right? So it's definitely a balancing act, which I think you guys are doing a pretty good job of handling right now. And I think a lot of people are very curious to see what's going on. I do think the big thing as well is like, definitely you see the first few days of the beta seems to have such an impact on everyone's perception, because that's always the news item, is the beta's back for said game. And I've still got people this morning, as soon as I turned on my live stream, going, oh, I really wanted to play this beta. It's a shame you can't have access to any of the units. And I went like, oh, I've been streaming the game for the last few days saying, all the units are actually unlocked now. You guys did make that adjustment. But it's fascinating how just with the flow of information and the natural marketing you get from betas, that how the beta first hits and those first like 2 days, 48 hours is so crucial in terms of what gets just disseminated through the gaming scene by word of mouth. And that's something I think I'm much more aware of now more than ever. So yeah, really looking forward to seeing how the next few tests go as well. But on that note, let's move on. We're already taking a very long time to talk about these issues. Let's be a much quicker interview. Sorry, David. But let's talk about the units. Let's talk about balance. A patch just went out, and you guys have moved the game in a certain direction. You are moving the game to be much more about extreme unit counters. You've got your, not counter triangle like many games have, but the counter square, where we have big units, just, a good versus splash damage at tanking it. Splash damage beats up small units. Small units can swarm over anti-big units, which are, of course, the famous Destroyer being the most important example, but also units like Assault Bots, Butterflies, and now Advanced Destroyers, and of course Advanced Blinks have become an anti-big unit, all being really good at destroying those big chunky units as well. So we've seen patch changes in this last patch. Like Advanced Blink now has 20 times damage multiplier versus big. We've got the Valkyrie going from 5.5 times damage versus air to 11 times damage versus air. For a lot of people who come from like a StarCraft background or even a lot of games, these numbers sound absolutely insane as multipliers. They sound just crazy. And for me, I was thinking about this when I first saw this patch on stream, and I was saying to myself, well, I guess the only time I've encountered that is like the Spearman in Age of Empires 2, you know? He's plus like 16, I think. Pikeman plus like 32 damage versus cavalry. And I was like, oh yeah, from like 4 to 32. Like, okay, yeah, that's an 8 times. That's not a 20 times or an 11 times. So are these numbers really that crazy? Is this just something where you're pushing people into trying to understand the counters because they just weren't understanding it and you're trying to make it more obvious for players? Do you think these are the sort of numbers the game will probably be settling on? Talk us through these extreme hard counters.
Yeah, so certain ones exist, like the ones you point out. Actually, I had a long discussion about this yesterday with Tom. He was one of the most hardcore, dedicated StarCraft 2 players at Blizzard on the cinematics team. He's now at our one of our sister studios, so we have access to each other on Slack, kind of thing. So I talked to him a lot at Blizzard, talked to him a lot here, and he was kind of bringing this point up among others. Our conclusion at the end of the discussion was it doesn't matter what the numbers look like on the stats page. What
Mm-hmm.
really matters is the in-game unit interactions and if that's working well or not. So if the 20x multiplier against big is not working well in game, that's a big problem. We got to fix that through the stats. But on the flip side, like if it works, if it counters the big stuff well, it gets countered by what is supposed to get countered well, and if it's working properly, there's no issues. And I'm not talking just from a point of view of the numbers working as we intend. I'm also talking
Mm-hmm.
about it from players playing point of view. The unit feels right when I see it and I read the description, and it's supposed to counter this, it's supposed to lose to that. And if that all feels good, then the actual numbers, they don't really matter. So maybe the short answer is let's take a look at how the units, these specific units, if they are in question, play them in games. Let's identify problems that exist with those. And sure, if the 20x multiplier is the problem in this specific case, we can always fix that. That's an easy change that we can make and turn around pretty quickly, even.
Yeah, I guess that's interesting, right? Obviously, it's like it's more how it feels in game. So I think what's interesting about these sort of numbers is it shows a philosophy of like making those a bit more, I guess, decisive. Those counters, right? Like the destroyers one-shotting the king crabs, almost one-shotting crusaders and things like that, right? You've got if you see a 20 times damage multiplier, it's funny because the advanced blink. I mean, this is a huge shift, just design wise, because the advanced blink was an all rounder. It was when we kind of people didn't took a while to figure out tier 3 in the first closed beta test, and a few weeks in we figured out someone was like, the advanced blink beats most things. It shoots up, it shoots down, it teleports, it's kind of tanky, so it's not that bad versus splash damage. You know, people were like, how do you beat this unit? I remember all the top players for like 2 days were just rushing two base, even sometimes three, but usually two base to advanced blinks and winning the game with it. And it was fascinating to see because I feel like there was definitely a lot more units like that. Tier 3 was often, if you get to tier 3, you're just getting better quality units, but it's really hard to get to tier 3 and have enough energy left over to make use of it, right? So I was a big fan of the assault bot. It was just like, it's just a way better gun bot, right? It's still got the same weaknesses and the same strengths, but I just get a higher value unit, and this is my payoff for getting to that level. You guys seem to have removed that in terms of we don't just want there to be generally, oh, you've got the carriers, you know, like you know in StarCraft it's like someone comes out, they've got 8 carriers with +2 attack, and suddenly it's just, oh, you got to the thing that beats all the other things, you know, like there's feelings like that in a lot of classic RTS, and it feels like you've very consciously tried to lessen that and basically say, no, advanced blink is a teleporting destroyer, you know, the Valkyrie is dominating air units and really crushing things like the Kraken. It will counter the Kraken, it will shoot down the cat bus really quickly. Not very good against anything else, right? But it smashes that role out of the park. And I think for me, my interpretation is that you guys saw players, and let me know if I'm on the mark with this. People hop in and say, "Oh, this is just a micro arena. It's just Clem and parting and these StarCraft pros clicking their units around really fast. And what do you do in StarCraft? You when you figure the game out, you're not really countering your opponent's composition. You start with a generally strong composition that's balanced. And it felt like with these changes, you can't just have a balanced composition with tanks up front, damage units behind, and some artillery in the back or something like that. You really needed to adjust your composition to your opponents. And it feels to me like this shoehorns players into actually playing the strategy game and thinking about the deck and the counter systems much more.
Yeah, for sure. Um, this is not like we want it to be different for the sake of being different, but I how we got here to these certain hard counters is by trying to answer that question of how can we make the most fun battle aces possible. And let me give the summit slash alpha example leading all the way up to here again.
Mm-hmm.
So players like Parting or Clem, like you say, it's like back then, um, tech doesn't matter. Tech choice doesn't matter. It's like I just pick 2 units or 3 units, and it's all round enough. So it comes down to micro. So it's not that micro battler is a problem. Like that's really fun. Like I love StarCraft micro battle wins or losses, etc. too. But in a game like this that has kind of streamlined so many parts of RTS, this is not the best the battle aces that we can make. It was the kind of the hypothesis that we wondered about kind of thing. That's why we slowly moved a little bit more and more into this direction. And the reason why I personally believe that this is the more fun version of Battle Aces is because you still have all the micro battle components even with the current hard counter changes. So like Clem versus Trigger matches that you casted was it yesterday, 2 days ago? I can't remember, but
Mm-hmm.
when I was watching, it's like there's a lot of games where it's just like I mean, straight up because of better micro, you won, kind of thing. But what I like better is that's cool, but can we have more like alternate paths to winning and not just that only one way to play, only one way to win? And that alternate path is like um, reacting properly, both out of the game when I'm setting my deck to think about, okay, so when the opponent goes this type of thing, which I see very commonly these days, I'm gonna go Starforge for XYZ reason. But if someone does like this other thing, I'm gonna go Foundry for this XYZ reason. But if someone does that, then I'm gonna straight tactic Cat Bus, and he's not gonna have to like I'm gonna have this like 30-second window because of the way he teched. So this type of thing is crazy fun too. So ideally, a player that can master both, and I think the closest player to this, to me, seems like Parting right now. So curious on tomorrow's. There's like the tasteless tournament tomorrow, so I'm curious if he wins again. But um, I think this is the most fun version of Battle Aces that keeps us going in the long term. Because if it's just a micro arena, or say it's just about the counters too, then that would be bad too. I would say, but this middle ground where both the micro way to win as well as the strategic decision making way to win as well as the great positioning way to win, like multiple ways to win like this, we really believe this is the most fun version of Battle Aces that we've tested so far. Granted, um if we should still keep our open mind, and if we're wrong in any of these areas, we still have time to pivot. But currently, as of today, this is what we think.
Okay, cool. I think it's fascinating because it does create, like I said, more people are being forced to think about the unit decks and the choices. Do you think, yeah, and you still got the open mind that you said, about how you're going to change it and stuff. So units could be scaled back to not be so, I guess,
Absolutely. Yes.
deleting each other's units. I guess we can go straight into another question here because destroyers are, I think, a unit which a lot of people get very frustrated by. They feel they create a no-go zone for their big units nearby, and in a way, there's a strategy there. You have destroyers. I'm not going to make big units, or I'm not going to make many of them. And I'm going to try and, just build a few and force you to build a lot of those destroyers because the destroyers really aren't good at anything except that one role. You don't want to build too many of them, right? So you can kind of force an overreaction. But a lot of people go, well, one of the problems here, and this is actually, there's a question on Reddit. So let me find the exact question here. I can't find the exact person who posted it. Anyway, the person who posted on Reddit was basically saying, look, the unit counters are a bit imbalanced right now. So when it comes to the counter square, anti-big deletes big, splash deletes small. But the other two are kind of just, it doesn't get destroyed in this scenario, right? Like, so big units against splash, they can tank very well against them, right? But they don't remove the splash from the battlefield, right? The splash can still target other units, it can still have an impact over time. Likewise, small versus anti big, you don't take big damage to them. So some people were saying, well, don't you think it's not really a balance? It's not a counter square because these two are just super, like, it deletes that unit. You can't have it anywhere nearby. And the other ones are just, oh, you guys do pretty good versus that. Like, you guys can fight well against that. Is that a concern?
Yeah, but I want to say the ultimate goal is we want to have as much variety as possible. But there's truth to it. But my immediate thought was like, I mean, but I can think of examples that are not true there. Like for example, Cat Bus versus Predator is a big versus Flash relationship, and that's a super hard counter. Like I want to say harder than Destroyer versus Crusader, even type of thing. Whereas other things, other big versus Flash, might not be so. Like say like King Crab versus Mortar, not as hard counter as Cat Bus versus Predator, in my opinion, and so on, right? But I think the ultimate goal here is to have different units that stand out in different ways. So like a destroyer maybe stands out as like, oh, one shots this thing like so extreme, and like you said, because of this factor, I don't want to build so many of these guys all the time, and that's just what's unique and different about that unit, within reason, of course. So like if it's to the point that like, so my go-to example here is I don't know if you played Clash Royale, but I
Mm-hmm.
personally believe do you know the unit Sparky? It counts down like three times and then
Yes,
shoots.
yes. It's like a
Yeah,
six
and it's
six
really fast as
second
power. Yeah,
giant
yeah, right.
giant lightning blob. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So that one, when it got nerfed, at least my point of view was it's not OP. Like when I use it, when I play against it, it's clearly like win loss ratio wise, it's fine. It's
Hmm.
balanced. But I believe it got nerfed because it's just not fun to play, like for too many players. If we ever have that, if the destroyer is in that spot, then I would say we should look at that and change it that way. No matter the balance aside, right? But
That's a really good example because the
yeah,
Sparky
right.
was one of those units that below a certain level, Clash Royale
Yeah,
players would just be like, this feels
it feels
unfair.
completely
We don't know
impossible.
how to
Yeah,
deal with this at all, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
if you don't
right.
know how to plop like goblins on top of it and, surround it
Yeah,
and
right.
stuff like that, it does feel insanely strong if you don't have high level unit placement. Yeah.
Right. But the reason why I'm questionable, it's questionable to me for the destroyer specifically, is because, but I do see even highest level players going big units against the destroyer. Like even though that tech is available, so and I do think this happens because of the real time nature. Because um, so let me think of a common scenario that I see when I watch, say like it really depends on the timing. Say like I have to do this strong attack on your third base right now, the one in the middle, and you don't currently have destroyers right now. So it's super valuable for me to build the king crabs right now, and I'll get my win right here. And doesn't matter afterwards if I get one shot or not, because your slow moving destroyers are coming to me. Whereas, say the destroyer was as is, but there was a balance change to make it super fast. Then I could see a case where it's like closing in on that Sparky territory because there's no window where I can even use my king crab ever. So it's this really delicate, I guess, situation that we have to look at all factors. But ultimately, maybe an easy way to look at it is, are there scenarios where you can still use these units? And if the answer is a strong yes, versus if the answer is a strong no, I think the decision point on how to, like, what to do in this situation in terms of game balance is very different. So I'm not sure if this is the best example that I'm giving, but all I'm getting at is anything that's problematic, whether it's because it's a balance problem or because it's like nobody's having fun with this unit problem, we're going to fix it either way, right? But all I'm saying is there's an importance of pushing the boundaries as much as possible to create as much variety in units as possible so that there's always new things to try out, new combinations I can explore, etc. So we do really want to keep an open mind and really try and push things. But of course, if it's broken, then we'll scale it back, kind of thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you've touched on design philosophy there when it comes to games and being willing to take risks and make things feel a bit whoa. And the thing, I think this is something that's important for fun. And people, it's funny after 14 years of StarCraft 2 being out that you worked on heavily, and so many people going, "Oh, David and the rest of your team, you made things too brutal. This thing's too strong. This feels too unfair." And the last couple of years, there's been a shift where people have gone, "Oh, we're nerfing too many fun things. We need more things that feel a bit too overpowered. There's this relationship between the things that feel unfair are usually the things that feel the most fun to use, and it's also very satisfying to find ways around those things. These are challenge points, and they can be too problematic, right? They definitely can hang around too long, especially I think when you don't balance a game frequently. I think is when they rear their ugly head the most, right? I think when you've got a quick patch cycle and you don't let things fester for years and years and years with a certain problem that people are bored of, that's when I think things become problematic. But I think definitely in like shorter balance cycles, you can be a bit riskier with these things. I think with the destroyer, you touched on there's counterplay, right? So just to go a bit super nerdy here, and apologies to anyone who wanted a more high level, I guess, stepped back. I'm like, I want to talk about the destroyer more because you're a high level player as well, Dave. By the way, was that you I played last week? We played one game, I think. You're still playing. Can I dox your in-game account name? Is that okay?
Um, I'm not sure, but I haven't changed my name, so you know.
Okay, I think we played a very close one on
Yeah.
like day one or day two, where it was very fun. But you're a very high level player as well, right? So you're not a dev who's sitting in the bronze league or anything like that. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing. You don't need to be good at a game to balance things. Um, the counterplay for the destroyer is definitely it feels like it's a very accessible unit right now. And what's occurred to me while you were discussing it, and this is just food for thought. This is just us kind of theory crafting, right? This is not me kind of saying you should do this. I was thinking maybe it's a little too accessible. Like Expired's a high level player in chat as well, and he was saying feels like it's a very limiting factor. It's kind of ubiquitous in decks right now, and it's the ubiquity. It's the fact that it's in so many decks, and people feel they can't use these other units that much. And we talked about, well, you can dive around and cut off, and if you can't push with destroyers and defend your 3 bases and have destroyers everywhere, it's not possible. Especially, what if I only built 3 king crabs? What are you going to have, 8 destroyers spread in all areas of the map? So you don't know where my king crabs are going to come from, right? But at a high level of play, that holds true. I would imagine the mid, and then as you get lower, as people clue onto the destroyers will become more and more a non-interactive gameplay element. Whereas at the highest level, they're very interactive because of what I just talked about, where you abuse their positioning and get them out of that position, and you take advantage of it by forcing over responses, swapping into air and different things. It may create more of like a no-go zone where you're just like, I'm not going to build any big units because if I'm not good enough at multitasking or managing my units, I don't look and I send a guy and he just gets deleted. I didn't even see him die. Like, right? You just go, oh, that part of the map, I had 3 king crabs there. They're gone. I don't know what happened. I assume there was a destroyer. So it might be something where, in terms of changes, if this does become a problem, where you go, oh, you know what, it is too ubiquitous. It's everywhere. One thing could be increasing the cost, right, as well, to make it a little bit harder to get to, or something like that. Where a unit like that, I think on the advanced Foundry, like the advanced Destroyer on the advanced Starforge right now, or the Valkyrie, being such extreme units, it's not as big of an issue because it's something you see so far ahead of time. If you've got Kraken tier 3 and your opponent has Valkyrie and you've both already teched Starforge, you don't go tier 3 air. There is no reason for you to go tier 3 air, and you can see that ahead of time. But when it's one of the two Foundry units, it does feel like very few big units, I guess, are being used in a large amount right now because the destroyers are so ubiquitous. So I guess that might be is that one of the metrics you might look at? Like, if a unit feels like it reduces viability of other playstyles, that's probably one of the reasons to adjust it, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. Or like if at a certain, say like average players, majority, which I would say are majority players even, if they're not having fun with a unit, no matter what it is, like destroyer or not aside, right? That could be a big factor in changing how the unit works. But I think the other thing to point out here that's important is I think we all need to kind of maybe get out of that, I guess, StarCraft mindset, like you mentioned too, of like the ultimate goal here for Battle Aces is like at least every single season there are new things to try. So like another big factor would be, I mean, if like X% or more of the players are always using Destroyer in one season, that could be another reason. Like even though there's no problems with it, that could be a reason to change that unit kind of thing. Oh, and this applies to any unit in the game. Maybe another good example is this. And it's fine if there is one or two or more units that are just not used. Like the Raider was very problematic in V2. We never found a solve for it. So it's still like it doesn't really exist in the game. Like it's not a unit
Yeah.
that exists in the game, really, if you are trying to win games at your skill level. It's like something that you play for fun or like to show off or etc. Like it's in this cat. It's clearly underpowered, but it can be used to win games if you're like really good or get the right timing, etc. Um, and this is not as big of a problem in a game like Battle Aces, especially once we're launched and multiple seasons have been going and the unit roster is quite big. Whereas something like a StarCraft, it's like, I mean, that's one unit I can't use in a specific matchup that I need. Like, I can only use like 6 units per matchup, or whatever the number is per matchup. Removing one of those is a big deal. Whereas here, I mean, I have 50 units to use right now. Removing one is not. All I'm getting at is if there is a problem, I think the fix and the solve for us is very quick and can be very easy too.
Yeah, and you guys have mentioned before your patch cadence. So is that something where it's kind of set in stone? It's rough right now. Every few months you want to try and release new units, have big balance changes. Is anything set in stone there? Anything more you can share for us about like once the game's released and how much you want to release those patches?
Yeah, so nothing is set in stone for launch because we're still exploring. But the reason why we've talked about things like every single season, we're going to do major changes, perhaps even mid-season. So we're talking about 6 weeks for season, 3 weeks for mid-season patch, something like this. The reason why we give these examples is because we really want to stress the point that we want the game's strategy to constantly be evolving so that we keep this great balance of execution matters as well as the strategy matters at all times, because we strongly believe at this time that this is the most fun version of battle aces that we can chase, versus if everything settles down in a season and second season feels the same, season feels the same. Like this works for a game like StarCraft 2 or many other traditional RTS, but we really don't think this will work for a game like battle aces kind of thing. And if I were being realistic, I would say my best guess is the first season when we launch, there's going to be a lot of problems. So it's going to be
Yeah.
way more than 2 patches, is my personal guess kind of thing. But eventually, we will be able to settle down and get towards what the right and best thing to do for the game is. And then at that point, I think is when we sort of finalize what the real cadence is. But the important thing here is like that main point of real time as well as strategy both matter strongly at all times. That's our goal here through the changes.
Not just speed, not just clicking fast, but the understanding the game, the figuring out the game with new iterations, and I think that's exciting. You know, as a greedy content creator, it's fun to have new patches and new units because it's new content, but it's also it's a discovery process. It's what I enjoy about every time there's a new card game season in Magic the Gathering or something like that, where I'm like, oh, there's okay, got to figure out how these new cards work. You know, I'm going to go do a draft. What the heck is the power level of everything? What's my priority list? It just kind of gives you this new thing to chew into, and it kind of is like the first learning process of a strategy game all over again. So I really like the idea of having frequent patches. It's fun. Last balance note that I wanted to talk about: Tier One anti-air was the last thing I wanted to talk about that's changed big in this current version of the game. Not in this patch from today, but just from the start of this. Tier 1 anti-air is now 50 matter, 50 energy. So 50 red, 50 blue resource used to be 75, 25. And also, it feels like their stats have maybe been tweaked a bit against anti-air. They're definitely just stronger versus anti-air. You have a better anti-air option now. What was the thought process behind doing that?
So this one was kind of a pet peeve we had for a long time, and there's another one if you're interested that we haven't done anything about.
Oh yeah, I'd love to
But
hear
what,
it.
what we didn't like, oh yeah, we can talk about that one too. Yeah, if I forget, you can remind me.
I will.
Um, So what we didn't like, and it wasn't like a problem per se, but what we didn't like is this weird like math problem of sometimes it's actually better to go the 75-25 cost AA unit instead of the better AA unit that I had, like a tier 3 AA unit, because of how the ratio of that works. because the later the game goes, more valuable the energy resource becomes compared to matter. And it's like this is not a problem per se, and it could be cool to some people too, even. But we've always wondered, like, what would it be like if we change that? Like, we just like to know that. And I'm not trying to say 50-50 is straight up better. I don't know, is what I'm saying. We just made this change for this beta test. We're still testing it out. But we thought, yeah, we do have a long ways to go. We have a lot of time. We might as well just try it to answer this question that we had. And then the other one is this is like a weird like trivia thing, right? Um, all units in battle aces regenerate, right? But they have an out of combat regeneration. So like they haven't they have to be out of combat and then they start regenerating slowly. But workers, they just have constant regen, and this is just like an overlooked thing. Like we never like intended it to be this way. But the reason why it's kind of hard to touch is because but all the like relationships are depending upon the fact that they regenerate all the time, unlike anything else in the game. So
Ah.
it's like this weird like other pet peeve that we have of like it'd be great like from a clean design point of view it'd be great if it's the same as the but it's just like do we really want to spend the effort to clean this up when it doesn't even matter and it works the way it does? Players have learned all these timings around the workers already, etc. So this
Hmm.
is another kind of funny explanation. So on one of them, we felt like, I mean, tier one AA big enough, right? To at least answer that question, whether we revert it or keep this or do something else aside. We wanted to answer that question. And then for the workers, it's like, it's so mine. Like nobody cares that they have this regeneration, right? In the grand scheme of things. So for now, we decided, whatever, just leave it. And it's fine for now. But we'll see if anything changes.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It changes the game flow in my experience to be air units aren't as scary early on as they were in closed beta test 1. But late game, as you said, the tier 1 anti-air unit does fall off. So I haven't seen it so much. It's like I've glimpsed the fall off point, but I'm just finished the game before we get there usually because I'm aware of like I'm like, oh, we're getting to mass cat boss, where they're getting lots of cat boss and I'm hitting max supply. And, I can take down, because I've been up at base a long time, the first few cat busts with tier 1 anti air units, but at a certain point, this isn't going to work because the supply density for them, I'm also spending all this energy on these very squishy guys, and he's going to be able to add some splash damage units in there, and even a few hits of those are just going to obliterate my blink hunters. And you kind of go like, that's the downside. We're not seeing it too much. What we are seeing is like, okay, it used to be like you could just like come out with a wave of dragonflies or falcons and fight front on, and at the moment, that's nowhere near as powerful as it was because players are also better at just leaving their anti-air units in worker lines. People are getting a bit off the F2, the select all army addiction button, I think. So people have gotten better at not leaving their worker lines exposed. But I'm very curious to hop on the ladder later today because you've increased the hit points on the Falcon. I think that was probably the saddest one, in that the Falcon felt rather worthless because the tier 1 anti-air was beating it, and it was kind of always like its purpose was to be the one that could fight front on against the tier 1 anti-air. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that extra, I think it was 400 hit points, will apply there. But either way, I was just curious about that because I was like, oh, this just changes the flow so much. And I think for now I'm enjoying it a bit more, even though it definitely has made air units much less important in this version of the game. It's a different way of playing the game, right? We're seeing more stingers, more mammoths, more of these alternate units on the Starforge, and the butterflies have been the main unit that's being used, but they're used like very specific, very precise ways. We're seeing players like come in. We saw, I think it was yesterday, I was casting game between Boanan and Printf, and like there was this base that had barely survived on a sliver of life, and he just could not get it down. And then there was a bunch of blink hunters waiting for the butterflies to come in, but then he ran in with the wasps, forced the blink hunters to blink back, and the butterflies came in and just got their few shots off and sniped the base and ran away. And it's kind of interesting because in the first beta test, air units was much more like, here's a bunch of butterflies, whatever, and I'm just gonna like, you don't quite have enough anti-air. We're gonna roll over your army now with a surprise tech switch. It's interesting. I don't think one's necessarily better than or worse, but I kind of like the idea that StarCraft, or if this was a game that was released 10 years ago, I'd be worried going, oh, but long term, if we're playing with this meta, I'd be so much more worried about it because I know you guys are willing to change it, and it could just go back and forth season to season, and we just have different ways of playing that air versus anti-air interaction. It allays a lot of my fears because it feels like you're just going to be playing a new version of the game, a new update every couple of months. To me, that makes the game very exciting, and it makes it, not so worrying if something feels like, that might get repetitive in the long run, because I actually trust you guys to change it. So thank you very much for inspiring that trust in me, mate.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Falcon, um, like I would say in closed beta one, in a lot of the tier one AA matchups, they would win for cost. So it was a very like major threat. Like you could say it was kind of OP at tier two timing, but trying that in some seasons with certain units and others in other units, I think this could really add to kind of like the strategizing. So like something being a little bit like 10% OP, I think might be a cool thing, because if that's what majority of the players do, then my answers change, and if my answers change, then the counter to that changes. So every season, that might be a kind of a quick way to I guess switch up how players go about thinking about their deck building as well as in game kind of thing, right? So I completely agree with your sentiment kind of thing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all your time. We're going to finish up very quickly with some Reddit questions, because I have already taken so much of your time, as I tend to. Once again, everybody, apologies for being a bad interviewer. I don't interview much, but I just talk about games, and thankfully, David's humoring me. Appreciate it. We had a question from Comprehensive End, who says, 1v1 is fun, but it's very bare bones. It makes sense for early access, but what is your focus to improve variety? Maps, special game modes, a draft mode, maybe a best of three format with different decks and restrictions? What do you have planned?
Yeah, so our current thought is we're very much focused on the launch of the game, and the area to add the variety, replayability, etc., is clearly on the units. But where we draw that line for units, there's a big question. So, for example, a lot of the feedback that we get is more active abilities. And sure, we should explore that fully before we or maybe not, depending on how the testing goes, right? Like, because if this is great as is, and if the player sentiment, feedback, the data coming in, etc., is such that like, oh yeah, like majority players like how simple each unit is, but it's the combination of those things that add the depth. If this is the case, then maybe not. But otherwise, we could. But we do really want to focus on units for the launch of the game. Maybe another example here is like crossbow is very, I would say, not super interesting right now. But imagine if there was, or if there are multiple splash damage units that are air units, then clearly that would be the best by far out of any tier one option, right? So we do want to explore things like this to kind of make use of existing units becoming a lot more interesting, as well as new units coming in that add a lot to the variety and the replayability, etc. But post launch, one of the first things that we want to start working on, once we hit this first major goal of we did it, like we made a like really fun Battle Aces game, is to explore things like events mode, where we can try out different things, um, such as like, what if your expansion order was different, or you asked, what if a completely different layout map enters play. All these things we do want to explore, or like map affixes. Say like if there's like a blizzard storm once every X to Y seconds, and that does this type of debuff to range units, this type of other debuff to melee units. It really changes up how you think about existing things, right? So we do want to heavily explore, after we get through that first step of launching the best game that we can make of this type. And then how can we add to that? We are looking at it as more of a next step kind of thing.
Yeah, I like the idea of a game starting simpler as well. I've been playing so many strategy games in development over the last few years, and I do think a big thing is there's often a lot of ideas, and what really matters is executing very few ideas. Like, there's a lot of games where my main criticisms have been this is cool, this is cool, this is cool, remove them all and release those 6 months and a year after release, because you just need to do the first thing like really well, because people don't have attention spans anymore. I don't have an attention span anymore, and it just makes like you're dealing with games that are so much easier to pick up and play. So rather than overloading people with five half-baked mechanics and having all these different variables thrown at you, right? It's something where like part of me says, dude, give us maps, Davey. Come on, just give us different maps. Give us. I want there to be a river in it. I want there to be bridges. I want there to be this and that. And then that's like the classic RTS part that just wants unlimited stuff to delve into. And after my first 50 hours in a game, sure, I love that. But on the other hand, when I'm learning an Age of Empires or a StarCraft for the first time, and then suddenly I'm on a water map and I have to do a completely different playstyle, and I'm like, what the heck? There's ships now. Oh, now you're on a map where you get a gold base in the back or something. You're like, oh, like as if the variability of playing a strategy game and dealing with your opponent and the 4,000 variations they can throw at you isn't already enough. So I think your philosophy is sound there. Stick to that. That being said, I do like to hear that, like, after released, you're going to potentially turn your mind to that. And already, I think a lot of people would be excited to hear you say more activated abilities, being something, High Templar riding a rhinoceros or something. I don't know. We want to see all sorts of crazy stuff as the game evolves. Maybe not quite that crazy, but that should be awesome. The next question will be: we would love to know if they plan on keeping units behind a paywall or not. I don't believe they've ever stated. Oh, no. Actually, sorry. That's not the question I want to ask. I already asked you that. My bad. What strategies in the development and beta have surprised you from Vojnikmon? So basically, what have the players innovated that you didn't see coming? Have there been any big surprises you hadn't encountered in internal playtesting?
See, there's a lot. Like even at the personal level, I was very surprised at certain things. And I think it has to do with both how because we do have a very small team here. So it's not like a generally like we can capture all play styles of all players kind of thing. So maybe looking back from CBT1 onwards, I want to say um, the king crab stuff surprised us, and we actually like really leaned into it, making it even more viable because that was kind of cool. Another was we just thought um, recall just dominates wasps, and we were actually worried about like how hard counter that is. But there's actually a timing window where wasps are way stronger than recalls in reality, both in CBT1 and then we're seeing it again in CBT2. Oh, sorry, I know you don't like CBT because it's cardio.
Oh, hey, we love a bit of
Yeah,
modern psychology. Nothing cognitive
yeah,
behavioral therapy recommended to everyone. It's fantastic tool for mental health. Also for
yeah.
testing your closed beta test 1 and 2. No, I'm actually used to it now. This is the way it works. You guys use jargon, and then I
Yeah.
just start using it a week later after complaining about it. So you noticed
Another
the recalls were kind of losing to the wasps a bit. Okay. Oh, sorry. What was the other one?
another big one I would say was the cat bus. Like we were certain they were good, but like we had to buff it like I don't know how many times, like so many times, and then now finally it's good kind of thing. And then I don't know if you remember, but at the summit, Crank asked me, "Oh, what would you go or whatever?" And I said, "Oh, maybe try out the cat bus." And he's like, "Oh, you tricked me into thinking like a cat bus." It's like, I mean, I don't know for certain, right? We've only been doing like internal play, small scale play tests, right?
That's exactly what I was thinking of. Where
Yeah, yeah,
I was
right.
like, man, this is so unfair. Crank's been getting all this advice from David this whole time, and then we
And then you
go to
get
game five,
dominated,
and
right? Yeah.
and I'm like, that was cool. I've never used the airships before, but he built the tier 3 cat bus. I guess I have to make this airship, and I'm like hard countering them, and I'm like, oh, this is lucky. And I just see Crank, and he just had this look of pure betrayal on his face. He was like, what the hell, David? You said this unit dominates late game. That's hilarious. I mean, it's just like that, isn't it? Right? There's so many things we saw in the first beta where like I was like, who knew that gunbots beat recalls, right? And it's like, oh, apparently like the recall just takes a little bit longer to like turn its gun and acquire a target. And if you can micro like Clem, even though the units I think technically have the same range, because the gunbot shoots instantly, you can just kind of move in and move out and just get way more shots off than the recalls can. Um, you need a clem, to actually figure that out. I don't think you really get that interaction because I still try to make that work every single time I'm playing Gunbot's First Recalls, and I'm lucky to get a few pickoffs, and that's with me sweaty microing as hard as I possibly can. So I think that's kind of cool. There's a lot to discover always, and as long as you're not allowing people to unpack their town center, their Mongolian town center, and then unsiege it up in the enemy base, or a few of the other egregious things that come through in most strategy games when they're being released. It's usually going to be doing all right. Hats off to you guys. We haven't had any units like glitch off the map yet or anything like that I've seen in the tests that we've played. Like, I feel like most strategy games by now, there'd be something where you can either animation cancel an attack to make it attack 10 times faster by like clicking in between each attack, or like you could do. I haven't. It's shockingly bug free. Is that something that's just a perception issue? Like, or you guys just have cleaned it up pretty well? Have you guys still coming across little bugs at all? Because it feels like you guys have avoided most of the normal RTS bugs.
I mean, there's always bugs, right? But the no matter where you're at. But I do think this is a great example of how strong and how dedicated, like majority, like so many of our team members are, kind of thing, right? Like it's because, and it really shows how much individuals care, because it's like it's not something that you can say like, oh, like we don't want to have major bugs for release, and so we just don't have like it really takes the day-to-day attention of specific individuals, kind of thing. And then the other thing that we heard a lot in the first beta test, but it's like accepted or now, is like how smooth it is to play on the NA server from Korea or from Europe, etc. Right? It's like we've heard a lot of feedback around like, man, we've never played an RTS game that's this good, kind of thing. So like, there's a lot of areas in the game that might not be so obvious that are so high quality, at least from my kind of RTS gamer point of view. And this is all kind of like proof of the like how hard like individuals in their area of expertise are doing their part to really make sure, like really go out of the way. Like they don't have to, right? Like they can just mark the task done after doing like 100% of it. But like so many individuals try to go over that on the Uncapped Games team, and I think it really shows in these kinds of examples. I think, right, and I think this is like one of the most, I guess, thankful things, I guess, for me, that I get to work with individuals like that here.
That's awesome. It's something which is actually, you say you're thankful for it, and I think we all are, but it's almost one of the things that when you do it well, it does go a bit unseen because it's the absence of the problems that are normally there, right? It's polish. It's game feels really polished, and it's, people say, oh, what makes the game good? Well, it's polished. It doesn't sound as impressive as it is, but it's the comparison of all the other strategy games that come out and all the different things that are broken in them and things that don't always work consistently and stuff, and you go, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. Well, I think that should about wrap us up, mate. I really appreciate your time and chatting to us about all sorts of different issues. I do look forward to the knight and the crossbow both being unlocked for everyone today, as well as all the new balance changes. I cannot wait to blink in with some advanced blinks and pick off some big units with 20 times damage multiplier. I am excited. And I'm hoping someone gives me an excuse to make Valkyries as well, though I feel like they're going to see that on the unit tab and they're just going to run away from ever building any air units with that 11 times damage multiplier. Thank you so much for your time, mate. Was there anything else you wanted to share before I let you go?
I think it was good. Yeah, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me. And yeah, thanks for the feedback. Thanks for the support. Like you, including everyone else watching too. It's really helpful to work in this, I guess, honest, transparent. Like let's just focus on making the game better kind of mentality. And it feels like we are getting there over time, which is great to see. So let's try to keep it up and try to make the best battle aces that we can make. Thanks.
Aces never fold. Thank you very much, mate. Catch you next time. Thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you all later. Bye.